Psalm 91. Heavenly protection surrounds you. No arrow of darkness can touch your life. There are moments in life when fear presses against the soul like a shadow that refuses to fade. You sense dangers you cannot see, whispers of evil that aim to disrupt your peace, and invisible arrows that seek to pierce your faith. Yet Psalm 91 stands as a divine fortress, a heavenly declaration that God Himself becomes your refuge, your shield, and your deliverer. It is a covenant of protection, written not only for those who believe, but for those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Psalm 91 isn't merely a comforting poem. It is a spiritual reality that surrounds those who trust in God's name. It reminds us that divine safety is not the absence of battle, but the presence of the Almighty amid the storm. Every line of this sacred psalm is a promise of invisible guardianship, an assurance that no weapon formed against you can prosper, and that no arrow of darkness, physical, emotional, or spiritual, can touch your life when you walk under His covering. In this reflection, we will walk through the living essence of this psalm in 5 great revelations, 5 movements of faith that transform fear into confidence, anxiety into rest, and vulnerability into divine strength. Dwelling in the secret place, the foundation of heavenly protection. The psalm begins with an intimate invitation. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. This is not a casual visitation. It is a life of continual communion. The secret place is not a physical location, but a state of spiritual nearness. It is where the believer walks so close to God that the chaos of the world cannot reach the inner sanctuary of peace He provides. To dwell means to remain, to take up permanent residence. It is not enough to occasionally pray or seek God when trouble strikes. Divine protection unfolds for those who live under His shadow, those whose first and last thought every day rests in His presence. When your life becomes anchored in prayer, your thoughts saturated in His word, and your heart aligned with His will, you have entered the secret place. In this place, fear loses its power. The arrows of darkness, words of accusation, plots of envy, spiritual attacks may fly by night, but they cannot penetrate the covering of His wings. This is the mystery of abiding. While others fight in the open fields of fear, the one who dwells in the secret place walks untouched beneath the covering of divine light. God's protection is not merely defensive, it is transformative. The more time you spend in His presence, the more unshakable your spirit becomes. The enemy cannot find you where God hides you. The snares of temptation, confusion, and distraction lose their pull when your soul is hidden in His strength. Those who live under God's shadow do not live a life free from storms, but they live above them. Like an eagle rising above the clouds, you learn to fly in the unseen air of faith, the invisible atmosphere of divine safety. To dwell in the secret place is to live with the awareness that God's eyes never leave you, His angels never abandon you, and His word never fails you. As you begin this journey of understanding Psalm 91, remember, your first call is not to fight the darkness, but to dwell in light. Every victory flows from intimacy with God. Protection begins with presence. Refuge begins with relationship. So when the arrows of fear come, when the night feels long and the path unclear, retreat into the secret place. Whisper His name, rest beneath His shadow. The Most High guards those who make Him their dwelling. If this truth is touching your heart, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Stay with us as we walk deeper into the power of God's Word, discovering how His promises surround your life like a shield of light. The shadow of the Almighty, where fear cannot live. When you live beneath the shadow of the Almighty, you are covered by something greater than human explanation. It is not a shade of darkness, but a canopy of divine light. It is the invisible assurance that while danger may exist around you, It cannot enter the sacred perimeter that God has drawn around your life. The psalmist declares, "I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust." Those words carry power beyond poetry. They are a declaration that establishes the boundary between fear and faith, chaos and calm, attack and divine protection. In this sacred shadow, the heart learns what true security means. The world seeks safety in walls, wealth, or influence, but the believer's protection is the nearness of God Himself. When His shadow covers you, no night is too dark, no valley too deep, no enemy too near. It is a space where fear cannot breathe, for the light of His presence drives out all shadows that threaten your peace. Fear feeds on distance from God. It withers when the soul rests close to Him. That is why those who remain near the Almighty walk with quiet strength, even in seasons of uncertainty. They do not deny danger, but they deny it the power to rule their hearts. The shadow of the Almighty is a living mystery. It is not created by human devotion. It is extended by divine mercy. When God spreads His covering, it reaches beyond physical protection. It covers your mind from torment, your emotions from despair, your body from harm, and your destiny from premature destruction. In His shadow, even the arrows that fly by day lose their direction, for nothing sent in darkness can locate the one surrounded by divine light. Every soul must choose whether to live by sight or by shadow. To live by sight is to respond to what is visible: threats, failures, enemies, uncertainty. But to live by shadow is to respond to what is invisible, the unseen strength of God's presence, the whisper of His Spirit reminding you that you are not alone. When you trust in His shadow, you no longer live reacting to fear, you move responding to faith. The Almighty becomes the atmosphere of your existence. Those who live under His shadow develop a holy stillness. While others panic, they pray. While others run, they rest. They understand that protection is not always about removing danger, but about remaining unmoved by it. God's shadow is not just shelter from the storm, it is serenity within the storm. The same presence that divided the Red Sea, closed the mouths of lions, and quenched the fire of the furnace, now dwells around those who trust Him. Many people read Psalm 91 as a charm of safety, a poetic shield against harm. But its true power is unlocked only through relationship. You cannot invoke His shadow without intimacy. You must walk with Him until His thoughts shape your reactions, His peace becomes your natural state, and His word defines your perception of reality. The Almighty does not cast His shadow over the indifferent. He surrounds the devoted. Those who live by faith in His name are drawn into the radius of His light, where darkness cannot survive. Consider how the shadow of God transforms fear into faith. Fear says, "I am alone." The shadow whispers, "You are surrounded." Fear says, "This may destroy me." The shadow answers, "Nothing can touch what I cover." Fear looks at the weapon, faith looks at the shield. In the shadow of the Almighty, the believer's eyes are fixed not on what threatens, but on who protects. Every arrow that seeks to pierce your peace loses its strength when you abide in His covering. This shadow is not passive, it moves with you. When you step into your day, His presence goes before you. When you lie down at night, His angels encamp around you. When accusations arise, He defends you. When sickness attempts to invade, He rebukes it. When temptation whispers, He strengthens you. It is a dynamic protection, alive and active, responding to every need before you can even articulate it. God's covering is not an external force you summon in times of trouble. It is an internal awareness that never leaves. There will be moments when fear tries to re-enter, when you hear bad news, when you face rejection, when loss shakes your stability. In those moments, you must consciously step back beneath His shadow. Speak the words of the psalm aloud. Remind your soul that the Almighty is not a distant deity, but an ever-present refuge. The more you declare His promises, the stronger your confidence grows. Fear thrives in silence, but faith is activated through confession. To say, "He is my refuge and my fortress," is to awaken the spiritual reality that you are no longer exposed to the arrows of darkness, but enveloped in divine strength. This shadow is also a place of humility. You cannot live beneath his covering and still carry pride. The shadow is low. You must bow to enter. It is in surrender that safety is found. When you let go of self-reliance and trust fully in his power, the Almighty himself becomes your defender. Many people try to protect themselves through control, manipulation, or calculation, but all human defenses eventually fail. The shadow of the Almighty is different. It requires you to release your control and rest in his sovereignty. The moment you do, you experience the peace that surpasses understanding, the calm that cannot be explained but only lived. Fear cannot coexist with perfect trust. Every fear is a signal pointing you back to his presence. Whenever anxiety rises, let it be a reminder to return beneath the shadow. The more you dwell there, the less room fear has to grow. God's shadow is the training ground for courage. It teaches your soul to look beyond appearances and to anchor itself in eternal truth. You begin to understand that protection is not the absence of danger, but the mastery of peace amid danger. In the shadow of the Almighty, your perspective shifts. You start to see trials not as threats, but as opportunities for God to reveal his faithfulness. The battle becomes a stage for his power. The darkness becomes the backdrop for his light. Even when life feels uncertain, you know you are wrapped in divine certainty. The Almighty does not promise a life without struggle. He promises victory within it. His shadow ensures that even in conflict, you remain untouchable in spirit. The one who abides in this place becomes fearless, not reckless, but fearless, because fear is replaced by revelation. You begin to see how limited the enemy truly is. The arrows he launches cannot reach what God covers. The storms he stirs cannot drown those who dwell in the shadow. The words he sends cannot curse what God has blessed. When you realize that the Almighty himself stands between you and every weapon of darkness, peace becomes your natural state. Every moment spent in his shadow strengthens your spiritual armor. It refines your discernment, sharpens your awareness of his voice, and builds a shield of faith around your mind. You stop reacting to threats and start resting in truth. This is what it means to live under divine protection, not merely surviving the attacks of life, but transcending them. You walk in a different rhythm, a sacred stillness that confuses the enemy because no fear can shake what God holds. This shadow also represents authority. To be covered by the Almighty means you move under his command. When he sends you, no power can resist you. When he shields you, no curse can reach you. When he speaks for you, no accusation can stand. Living under his shadow is not only about being hidden, it is about being empowered. You become a vessel through which his light pierces darkness. The protection of God is never meant to make you passive. It is meant to make you powerful, fearless, steadfast, and radiant with his glory. There is a deep rest found here, but it is not laziness. It is the rest of those who trust fully. It is the rest of knowing that every detail of your life is under divine supervision. You can walk through valleys without fear of shadows because you already live in one. The shadow of the Almighty. His shadow brings life, not death. It is the safest place in existence, the eternal promise that nothing can separate you from his care. If you wish to dwell in this protection continually, let gratitude be your posture. Fear flees from a thankful heart. Each time you thank God for his faithfulness, you reinforce the wall of light surrounding your life. Gratitude is the language of the protected soul. It keeps your eyes on the giver rather than the gift, the protector rather than the peril. So when fear whispers its lies, speak louder the truth. The Lord is my refuge and my fortress. When darkness tries to intimidate you, declare, "I abide under the shadow of the Almighty." Every word of faith is a shield, every prayer a wall, every praise a weapon. The shadow of the Almighty is not a temporary shelter. It is a permanent dwelling for those who trust Him completely. The greatest security you will ever know is not found in what you can see, but in the unseen presence that covers you. This is where fear ends. This is where peace begins. The Almighty Himself casts His shadow over your life, and under it, no arrow of darkness can touch you. If this message strengthens your faith and reminds you of God's unshakable protection, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Continue walking with us through the living Word of God as we uncover deeper truths from Psalm 91 and the divine promises that surround your life. The Deliverer's promise, escaping the traps and arrows of darkness. There is a promise woven into the heart of Psalm 91 that reaches into the deepest fears of humanity. The fear of being trapped, of falling into something unseen, of being struck by an enemy's arrow when least expected. The psalm declares, "Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence." This is not poetic exaggeration. It is a precise revelation. God is not unaware of the hidden snares, the invisible plots, or the spiritual traps designed to destroy His children. He does not merely watch from a distance, He delivers. His protection is not theoretical, it is active, immediate, and powerful. It works in dimensions we cannot see, and in battles we are not even aware we are fighting. The snare of the fowler represents the cunning strategies of darkness, traps set with patience and deception, not with violence. The fowler hides the net under leaves. He studies his prey. He moves silently. This is how the enemy operates against the righteous. He seldom attacks openly. He entices, distracts, seduces, and manipulates. But the promise of Psalm 91 breaks every silent conspiracy. God does not simply warn you about the snare, He dismantles it. He delivers you before it tightens, exposes what was hidden, and turns the plans of the wicked into their own downfall. To understand this divine deliverance, one must grasp the nature of spiritual warfare. The arrows of darkness are not always physical threats. They can be thoughts that poison faith, relationships that drain peace, or environments that weaken the soul. Some arrows are emotional: rejection, betrayal, shame. Others are mental: fear, confusion, despair. Still others are spiritual: temptation, oppression, doubt. Each is designed to steal something sacred: your trust, your focus, your intimacy with God. Yet Psalm 91 declares that these arrows cannot touch your life when you are under the wings of the Almighty. The image of the snare and the arrow are deeply connected. One traps, the other pierces. One immobilizes, the other wounds. Together, they represent the dual nature of evil: deception and destruction. The enemy wants first to entangle your mind, then to strike your spirit. But God, who knows every hidden scheme, stands as your deliverer. His protection does not depend on your awareness of the threat, it depends on His covenant promise. You may walk through seasons unaware of how close danger truly was, yet later realize that something, or someone, shielded you from disaster. That unseen intervention was not coincidence, it was covenant. The deliverance of God is both preventive and restorative. Sometimes He stops the snare before it closes, other times He breaks it after it has tightened. But the outcome is always the same: you are freed. The psalm says, "He shall deliver thee." It is not conditional, not theoretical, not uncertain. It is a divine certainty rooted in His nature. God is a deliverer not by occupation, but by identity. It is who He is. When you trust Him, His deliverance becomes the rhythm of your life. Every time the enemy plots, God intervenes. Every time darkness schemes, light exposes. The snares of the fowler are more frequent in times of blessing, when your spirit is rising, when your faith is growing, when your influence expands. That is when the enemy sets traps. He fears your growth more than your struggle. He knows that a believer who fully trusts God becomes unstoppable. So he sends subtle distractions disguised as opportunities, compromises dressed as comfort, or relationships masked as blessings. These are modern snares, invisible nets woven through convenience and desire. But when you live close to God, His Spirit whispers, "Be still, this is not for you." Dios, the deliverance of the righteous, often begins with divine discernment, the inner knowing that saves you from unseen harm. God's deliverance also works through divine timing. Sometimes He delays your steps not to frustrate you, but to protect you. What looks like a missed opportunity may be a hidden rescue. The door that did not open was a trap that did not close on you. When you walk with God, even delays are deliverance. Every no becomes a shield, every detour a redirection toward safety. This promise extends beyond the snare. It reaches into the noisome pestilence. The phrase speaks of destructive plagues, unseen forces that spread silently and bring chaos. In our modern world, this includes more than disease. It represents spiritual and emotional contagions. Fear that spreads like infection, anger that contaminates communities, sin that multiplies through imitation. Yet the psalm declares that none of these can touch the one who abides under God's covering. His protection is not limited by geography or circumstance. You carry His immunity wherever you go. When you are under His wings, you are not simply avoiding evil, you are overcoming it. God does not merely pull you out of the snare, He destroys it. He does not just stop the arrow, He reverses it. The same weapon designed to harm you becomes a testimony of His faithfulness. The very attack that sought to destroy your peace becomes proof of your divine covering. This is the mysterious reversal of God's justice. The enemy's plan becomes God's instrument of glory. Consider how the psalm continues. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Here the image shifts from the fowler's snare to a mother bird covering her young. The contrast is powerful. The hunter uses deceit to capture. The parent uses love to protect. God's deliverance is not mechanical but maternal. His covering is not cold but compassionate. He shields not only your life but your heart. He covers not only your path but your purpose. The phrase, "His truth shall be thy shield," reveals the secret weapon of divine defense. No truth. Lies are the arrows of darkness. Every attack of the enemy begins with deception. You are not safe. God has forgotten you. You are alone. This will end badly. These are arrows coated with fear, but the truth of God is your shield. When you speak His word, every lie shatters. The truth of Psalm 91 is not passive reading, it is active warfare. Each declaration reinforces your spiritual armor. When you say, "He is my refuge," you are not describing a feeling. You are enforcing a law of the Spirit. God's deliverance, therefore, operates through His word. The more you align with it, the more untouchable you become. The believer who meditates on God's promises daily walks surrounded by invisible defense. The devil may attempt to fire arrows, but each one melts in the air before reaching its target. This is not fantasy. It is divine physics. Light always overcomes darkness, and truth always outlasts lies. Yet this deliverance does not mean absence of battle. Sometimes the snare is broken only after a struggle. Sometimes the arrow still flies, but it cannot kill. Sometimes you walk through the valley, but you do not stay there. The protection of God does not promise immunity from conflict. It guarantees victory through it. Every trial you endure becomes a testimony of His unfailing defense. The psalmist says, "Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day." The two times represent the totality of life. Night and day, darkness and light, visible and invisible, whether the attack comes openly or secretly, God's protection is complete. You do not need to fear what you cannot see, for the one who watches over you never sleeps. He guards your nights with his presence and your days with his hand. The arrows of darkness lose power not because they cease to exist, but because they cannot find you in the secret place. There are countless arrows in the modern world, criticism that seeks to wound, betrayal that aims to destroy trust, anxiety that pierces the heart. But all of these meet the same fate when they touch a life surrounded by divine light. They fall powerless, unable to penetrate the armor of faith. That is why believers who dwell under this promise are unexplainably calm. They do not deny reality. They simply know a higher one. Their peace is not the result of ignorance, but of intimacy. They have seen the deliverer's hand too many times to fear the enemy's next move. To live under this promise requires confidence, not arrogance, but conviction, the deep knowing that no arrow of darkness can define your destiny. You are not a target, you are a testimony. The light of God does not remove you from battle, it redefines it. What once threatened you becomes fuel for your faith. Each narrow escape becomes a reminder of your deliverer. When you truly understand this, your prayers change. You stop begging for safety and start thanking for protection. Gratitude replaces panic. You begin each day not wondering what might go wrong, but celebrating what cannot go wrong, because you are hidden under his wings. This shift from fear to faith changes everything. It transforms how you think, speak, and respond. You stop living as a victim of circumstance and start walking as a vessel of divine preservation. And then something remarkable happens. Your life itself becomes a shield for others, those connected to you, your family, your friends, your community. Begin to experience the overflow of your covering. God's shadow extends through you. The same deliverance that keeps you safe becomes a refuge for those near you. This is why your faith matters. It is not private protection, it is contagious strength. The arrows will keep flying in this world, but not one can penetrate a soul covered by the Almighty. They lose direction, they dissolve in flight, they turn back toward the source that sent them. The Lord's deliverance is not a concept to be admired, it is a reality to be lived. Every moment you abide in him, his wings cover you. Every time you speak his truth, his shield rises around you. Every step you take in faith is another declaration to darkness. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Or there will be seasons when you feel surrounded, when circumstances press hard and fear whispers that this time it will break you. But it will not. You have already been written into Psalm 91's promise. The deliverer's covenant cannot fail. His shadow cannot fade. His truth cannot be cancelled. The arrows of darkness may be many, but the covering of light is infinite. So lift your head, child of God. You are not the hunted, you are the hidden. You are not the victim, you are the vessel. You are not exposed, you are enclosed. The deliverer has spoken, and his word stands, surely he shall deliver thee. If this revelation fills your heart with peace and strengthens your confidence in God's power to deliver, subscribe to this channel and walk with us as we continue to explore the divine promises of Psalm 91, where every arrow of darkness loses power before it ever reaches you. The power of his wings, when the Almighty covers you. Completely to live under the wings of the Almighty is to experience a dimension of divine security that human language struggles to define. It is not an abstract concept or symbolic image. It is a living spiritual reality that becomes visible in the life of the believer who truly trusts God. When Psalm 91 declares, "He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust," it unveils one of the most tender yet powerful revelations of divine love, that God's protection is both intimate and infinite. His wings represent not only defense, but also presence, warmth, and belonging. The wings of God are not fragile. They are fortified by eternal strength. They are stretched over his people in every generation, covering them from what they see and what they cannot see. When the soul learns to rest under those wings, fear loses its vocabulary. The arrows that once frightened you become powerless. The darkness that once intimidated you fades into insignificance. Under his wings, you are hidden, protected, and embraced. It is the only place where both the warrior and the weary find rest. This image of wings runs deeply throughout Scripture. In Exodus, God tells Israel, "I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." In Deuteronomy, he is described as an eagle stirring its nest, guarding its young. In the Gospels, Jesus weeps over Jerusalem and says, "How often would I have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you would not." Every mention reveals the same truth. God's protection is not distant or mechanical. It is near, gentle, and alive. It is the nearness of love that shields, not the distance of power. When you come under his wings, you're not merely being defended, you're being transformed. The atmosphere changes, your perception changes, even your reaction to life changes. Those who live under his wings do not panic when storms arise. They listen for the heartbeat of the one covering them. The winds may roar, the arrows may fly, the night may fall, but under his wings there is calm. The shadow of his presence becomes a sanctuary of peace that no external chaos can invade. To trust under his wings means to rest your full weight on his promises. It means you stop leaning on your understanding, stop grasping for control, and simply trust that the one who holds the universe can surely hold you. The act of trusting is not passive. It is the highest form of worship. It declares that God is enough. When you trust him, you give him permission to work beyond your limitations, to move beyond your comprehension, and to protect you beyond your sight. The feathers mentioned in Psalm 91 are not poetic decoration. They represent layers of divine covering. Each feather is a truth, each wing a covenant, each movement a miracle. His feathers symbolize the tenderness of his care, the personal attention with which he guards your life. When fear comes, it finds no entrance. When despair knocks, it finds no door. The Almighty surrounds his people so fully that even their vulnerabilities become sacred spaces of his glory. His wings are also a place of identity. The world defines people by status, success, or struggle, but under his wings, your identity is rewritten. You are a child of the Most High, heir of divine promises, protected by heaven's authority. You are not a wandering soul, you are a hidden one. The one who abides under his wings does not need the validation of men, because the approval of God is enough. This identity empowers you to face battles without fear of defeat, for you know whose shadow you stand beneath. Many believers understand God as a fortress, but not as a father. They see him as a protector, but not as a presence. Yet Psalm 91 reveals that divine protection flows from divine intimacy. The wings of God symbolize both strength and closeness, defense and affection. You are not merely behind walls, you are within arms. His wings curve around your life like a promise made before time itself, declaring that no weapon of darkness can enter the space he occupies. There will be times when the storm seems too strong, when you cannot see the wings that cover you. But protection is not always visible. The silence of God is not his absence, it is his strategy. While you wait in faith, his feathers are working, blocking what you cannot see, rerouting what could destroy you, calming what seeks to overwhelm you. You are never unprotected. You are simply unaware of how much protection is already at work. Under his wings, even delay has meaning. Sometimes God keeps you still because movement would expose you. Sometimes he closes doors, not because you are unworthy, but because danger stands on the other side. Every not yet in your life is a shield, not a punishment. The wings of the Almighty teach patience through peace. When you stop fighting for control, you discover that He has been fighting for you all along. The shadow of His wings also carries healing. It is written that the Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in His wings. This is not only physical healing, but spiritual restoration, the mending of what life has broken, the renewal of what time has drained. When you dwell close to God, you are constantly being renewed. His wings do not only protect, they restore. Every wound begins to close, every scar begins to fade, and every piece of your heart begins to beat again, in rhythm with His. Living under His wings transforms how you interpret danger. The same fire that consumes the unprotected purifies those who abide. The same arrows that destroy others become lessons for you. You begin to see adversity not as abandonment, but as refinement. The wings of the Almighty do not always block the wind. Sometimes they teach you how to stand in it. But even then, His presence remains your constant shelter. There is a divine paradox hidden here. The closer you are to His wings, the greater your peace, yet also the greater your awareness of battle. The light that covers you exposes what opposes you, but this awareness does not produce fear. It produces authority. The one under His wings does not fight for victory, but from victory. You know the outcome before the conflict begins, because your deliverer never loses. To remain under His wings requires humility. Pride cannot survive in that shadow, because pride insists on standing alone. The wings of the Almighty are low. You must bow to stay beneath them. But that posture of surrender becomes your greatest strength. The more you bow, the stronger your covering becomes. When you humble yourself under God's hand, you rise beyond the reach of the enemy. His wings also represent intercession. Just as the cherubim stretch their wings over the mercy seat in the tabernacle, so too the wings of God stretch over you when you come before Him in prayer. Every time you pray, the covering grows thicker. Every time you worship, the light intensifies. Under those wings, you not only find safety, but authority to stand on behalf of others. You begin to carry the fragrance of the presence you live beneath. Those who live under His wings carry peace wherever they go. The covering follows them into workplaces, homes, hospitals, and even battlefields. The peace under His wings becomes contagious. It radiates through your words and your silence. People may not understand why you are calm in crisis or joyful in trial, but that is the secret of the shadow. The peace of those wings cannot be explained, only experienced. The Psalm says, "His truth shall be thy shield and buckler." The wings of God are held by the pillars of truth. Without truth, there is no covering. Lies tear holes in the feathers. The truth of God, His word, is what keeps the shield intact. When you stand on the word, the covering strengthens. When you doubt the word, the feathers loosen. To stay under His wings is to trust His truth, even when everything visible says otherwise. Every time fear whispers, "You are exposed," the word answers, "You are covered." Every time guilt says, "You are unworthy," the word answers, "You are redeemed." Every time the world says, "You are alone," the word answers, "You are hidden under the shadow of the Almighty." His word is the voice of His wings, the sound that calms the storms around you. To be under His wings is to be in constant awareness of divine nearness. You begin to see signs of His care in small things, the timing of an encounter, the delay that saved you, the closed path that redirected you. Nothing in your life happens outside His observation. Every detail is part of the protection plan written before your birth. When you understand this, gratitude replaces anxiety. You no longer ask, "Why did this happen?" but rather, "What is God shielding me from through this?" Under his wings, your discernment sharpens. You begin to sense the traps before they form, the arrows before they fly. The spirit within you warns gently, stay still, or turn here, or do not respond. These inner whispers are not intuition, they are the movements of the feathers that cover you. Every divine warning is a wing shifting to block an attack. When you listen, you remain protected. When you ignore, you step outside the covering. The wings of the Almighty do not fail, but humans sometimes wander from their shadow. Fear, pride, or distraction can lure the soul away. Yet even when you drift, His mercy calls you back. The wings never close, they remain open for your return. This is the beauty of His covenant. His covering is stronger than your weakness, His mercy greater than your wandering. To live under His wings is also to carry faith into the unseen. You may not always feel the warmth of His feathers, but faith assures you that they are there. Faith does not need evidence, it needs remembrance. Every past deliverance becomes proof of present protection. When you recall how many storms you have already survived, how many traps you escaped, how many arrows missed their mark, you realize that His wings have always been there, silent but strong, unseen but unbreakable. And so, every day when you wake, whisper this prayer: Lord, keep me under your wings today. It is a simple request, but a powerful covenant. It aligns your soul with divine protection and reminds the unseen realm that you are not uncovered. When you live this way, fear cannot anchor in you. You become a living testimony that the shadow of the Almighty is more real than any danger around you. No force in heaven or earth can pluck you from beneath those wings. No word of curse can penetrate them. No night can hide you from the light they cast. You are fully, eternally, and tenderly covered. The arrows of darkness may still fly, but they will always fall short, for the wings of the Almighty are greater than the reach of evil. You may not always see the wings, but they are there, every day, every moment, over every step. When the world trembles, you will stand firm. When the night deepens, you will rest. When the enemy plots, you will be delivered, because the Almighty has covered you, and His covering cannot fail. If this truth has filled your heart with renewed peace and faith in God's sheltering presence, subscribe to this channel and continue walking with us as we uncover the living promises of Psalm 91, where every soul that abides under His wings finds safety no darkness can touch. The promise of no harm when the Lord commands His angels over you. When the psalmist wrote, "For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways," he revealed one of the most astonishing truths ever spoken about divine protection, that heaven itself moves on behalf of the believer. Every person who dwells in the secret place of the Most High lives surrounded by unseen guardians, sent directly by God, operating under His command. These are not mythical creatures or poetic symbols. They are real beings of light, messengers of divine will, sent to enforce God's promises in your life. To walk in the protection of Psalm 91 is to live in the awareness that you are never alone, never unguarded, and never without help from above. When you understand that the Almighty has assigned angels to your path, fear loses its authority over you. The darkness may plan, but heaven patrols. Evil may approach, but divine authority intercepts. The angels of God are not passive observers. They are active protectors, moving at the speed of obedience to execute the commands of the Lord concerning you. Every time you walk through danger unaware, every time an accident narrowly misses, every time harm seems close but never touches you, those moments are the silent evidence of angelic intervention. You did not escape by chance. You were kept by command. The psalm says, "To keep thee in all thy ways." Notice the completeness of the promise. It does not say in some ways or in the sacred ways, but in all your ways. In your journeys, in your labor, in your sleep, in your solitude, in your weakness. God's protection is not seasonal, it is continual. There are angels for the day and angels for the night, angels of strength and angels of comfort, angels that fight and angels that heal. Heaven's army is not limited in number or in power, and they are all under the direct authority of the one who loves you beyond measure. To keep means to preserve, to guard, to hold back harm before it can even reach your awareness. The angels of God do not only respond to danger, they anticipate it. They form a living perimeter around the life of the believer. There is divine choreography in how they move, silent, swift, and perfectly timed. Every assignment they carry is saturated with the intention of God's love. The believer who walks under this promise does not need to strive to feel safe. Safety is already written into the atmosphere of obedience. Yet angelic protection is not random. It is relational. It flows from intimacy with God. The angels respond not to fear but to faith, not to panic but to prayer. They are moved by the word of God, not by the emotion of man. That is why Psalm 91 repeatedly emphasizes the necessity of dwelling, trusting, and declaring. The angels are charged by command, but they are activated through confession. When you declare, "The Lord is my refuge and my fortress," you are not only affirming your faith, you are giving the angels their orders. Heaven responds to the sound of truth spoken in faith. It is no coincidence that the enemy once quoted this very passage to tempt Jesus in the wilderness. He said, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He shall give His angels charge over you." The devil knew the verse, but not the heart behind it. He tried to twist protection into presumption. The lesson here is vital. Divine protection is never a license to test God, but an invitation to trust Him. The angels guard obedience, not recklessness. When your steps align with the will of God, His angels accompany your path. But when pride or rebellion leads, protection diminishes. Not because God withdraws His love, but because you have stepped outside His wisdom. The angels assigned to your life are not limited by geography or circumstance. They are not bound by time or space. They move through barriers that no human defense can penetrate. They see the snares long before you do and dismantle them quietly. You may never see them, but you have felt their work. Every narrow escape, every unexplainable delay, every sudden change that spared you from danger, those are signatures of divine guardianship. Sometimes the greatest miracles of protection are the ones you never notice. The accident that didn't happen, the sickness that didn't spread, the betrayal that was revealed before it could harm. All these are the invisible evidences of Psalm 91 being fulfilled in real time. God's protection is not always dramatic. It is often discreet. The angels move silently, for their purpose is not to be seen, but to ensure that you remain standing. The verse continues, "They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone." This is one of the most intimate images of divine care in all of Scripture. The angels do not only guard from afar, they carry you. The Creator of the universe is so concerned with your safety that He assigns beings of light to lift you when you stumble, to steady you when you falter, to preserve your steps when the path becomes uneven. Every fall that should have broken you, every wound that should have destroyed you, every mistake that should have ended you, all of these have been intercepted by the hands of mercy that carry you unseen. To be borne up means to be supported by strength not your own. It is the acknowledgement that survival is not self-achieved. It is grace sustained. The angels do not replace your effort. They reinforce your endurance. You walk, but they uphold. You fight, but they surround. You rest, but they stand guard. This is why the believer can face overwhelming odds and yet remain unshaken, because strength does not come from within, it descends from above. There is divine order in this. The angels do not act independently, they act under command. The psalm says, He shall give his angels charge over thee. The command belongs to God alone. It is he who assigns, he who instructs, he who deploys. The angels are obedient soldiers of his will, not random agents of favor. They protect because he has spoken, and his word cannot return void. That is why you can trust the promise, because it rests not on angelic power but on divine authority. The word charge in the original Hebrew carries the meaning of an order that must be carried out completely. It implies military precision, a decree that cannot be altered, delayed, or ignored. When God commands his angels concerning you, the entire order of heaven bends toward your defense. But the true strength of this promise lies in what comes next. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder. The young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Here the psalm shifts from protection to dominion. God's covering is not meant to make you fearful of evil. It is meant to make you fearless before it. The same power that shields you empowers you. The believer who walks under divine protection is not only guarded but authorized. You are not merely surviving attacks, you are subduing them. You are not running from darkness, you are walking through it untouched, leaving the footprints of faith where fear once ruled. The lion represents visible threats, open aggression, intimidation, or danger that roars loudly. The adder represents hidden danger, silent poison, deception, and spiritual traps. The psalm declares that both are under your feet. The believer's authority extends over every form of evil, seen and unseen, loud and quiet, physical and spiritual. You tread upon them not because of your strength, but because of your position, under the wings of the Almighty, above the power of darkness. When the Lord covers you, the natural order of fear reverses. What once hunted you begins to flee from you. What once intimidated you now trembles at your presence, for you carry the mark of divine ownership. The angels around you are not just guardians, they are witnesses to your authority. They move in alignment with your faith. When you speak the word, they act. When you pray in faith, they move. Heaven responds to the believer who knows who they are under the shadow of the Almighty. Yet it is vital to understand that this authority does not arise from pride, but from surrender. The one who walks in divine protection is not boasting of personal holiness, but resting in divine mercy. You are not kept because you are perfect. You are kept because you are His. God's protection flows from His covenant love, not your performance. That is why the psalm ends with words of affection. Because He has set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. The foundation of all divine safety is love. To set your love upon God means to attach your heart to Him above all else. To love Him more than comfort, more than control, more than understanding. It means that even when you do not see the wings or feel the angels, you remain anchored in devotion. Love is the secret key that keeps the covering unbroken. When your heart is bound to God, the enemy cannot bind you to fear. Love builds a fortress that no darkness can breach. And then comes the most intimate promise of all. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. The same God who commands angels to move at His word bends to hear your prayer. The Creator who fills eternity listens to your whisper. The Almighty who rules the heavens stoops to respond to your cry. Protection is not impersonal, it is personal. Every cry of your heart is heard, every tear recorded, every battle noted. The one who hides you also hears you. God says, I will be with him in trouble, I will deliver him and honor him. And this is the paradox of divine safety. You may face trouble, but you will never face it alone. Protection is not the absence of conflict, but the assurance of companionship. When the fire burns, He stands beside you. When the storm rages, He holds you steady. When the valley darkens, His light leads you through. The Lord does not promise a life without trials. He promises His presence within them. and his presence is greater than any peril. The final promise seals everything. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Long life here does not merely mean years. It means fulfillment. It means a life untouched by premature destruction, a destiny completed, a calling fulfilled. To be satisfied with long life is to reach the end of your days, having walked in peace, purpose, and preservation. It is the assurance that no arrow of darkness can cut short what God has ordained. His salvation is not only from sin, but from every form of destruction. When you live under the promises of Psalm 91, you are surrounded by divine realities that the natural mind cannot comprehend. You are shielded by light, guarded by angels, sustained by love, and upheld by truth. Every breath you take is under supervision of grace. You walk in a world filled with danger, but are carried by hands that never tire. There will always be arrows flying, snares hidden, and voices of fear whispering in the dark. But for those who dwell in the secret place, none of these things can touch the essence of who you are. You may feel the wind of battle, but never the wound of defeat. You may hear the roar of the lion, but you will always walk away unharmed. You may see the shadows, but the light within you will outshine them all. This is the covenant of Psalm 91, not a distant promise, but a living reality for those who trust. It is God himself saying, "You are mine." And when the Creator claims ownership, all creation must obey. So lift your head, child of the Most High. You are surrounded by wings and guarded by flame. The angels walk beside you. The Spirit goes before you. The Lord himself stands behind you. No arrow of darkness can touch your life because your existence is wrapped in his word. Walk in confidence. Rest in peace. Speak his promises. Live unafraid. For the Almighty has given his angels charge over you, and their assignment will never fail. If this message has deepened your faith and reminded you that heaven surrounds your life with protection, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Continue walking with us as we explore the living truths of Scripture. And remember always, no arrow of darkness can touch you when the Lord himself commands his angels over your path.